The ballroom glittered like a palace. Crystal chandeliers hung high above, throwing light that danced across polished floors. Cameras flashed from every corner as men in sharp tuxedos and women in dazzling gowns stepped inside. Jewelry sparkled, champagne glasses clinked, and the air smelled of roses and wealth. This was not just a party. It was the most glamorous charity gala of the year, where only the richest and most powerful gathered. Guests whispered names of business giants, politicians, and stars, each arrival greeted with applause and admiration. But the moment that would be remembered forever did not begin with diamonds or silk. It began with something that looked like trash. The doors at the end of the hall creaked open again, and for a moment, no one noticed. Then a figure stepped forward slowly, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Every head turned, and in a second, silence fell. The woman was young, her face bright, but her dress shocking. It was not a gown from Paris or Milan, not even a simple evening dress. It was made from black trash bags, cut and tied together into a strange shape. The plastic crinkled under the golden lights, and the sound was sharp in the quiet hall. For a second, no one spoke. Then, like a wave, laughter broke out. People covered their mouths, some pretending to cough to hide their giggles. Others whispered cruel things that echoed in the air. "Who let her in?" one woman hissed. "Is this a joke?" a man muttered. "She looks like she came from the garbage." The young woman heard it all, but she kept walking, her chin held high. Her eyes did not drop to the floor, and her steps did not slow. She was poor, yes, but she was bold. Her name was Lena, and though her dress looked like waste, her courage shone brighter than the chandeliers. The cameras, hungry for scandal, turned quickly toward her. Flashes exploded like fireworks, capturing every second of this humiliation. The rich loved drama, and this was better than anything they had expected tonight. A poor girl in a trash bag dress walking among the richest people in the city. It was a story too perfect for gossip. The laughter grew louder, and soon the sound was like a cruel storm filling the ballroom. Yet Lena did not flinch. She walked slowly toward the center, her heart racing but her face calm. Then a deeper laugh rose above the rest. Strong, powerful, filled with amusement that made others laugh harder. It came from the head table where the most important guest sat. Damien Cross, the CEO whose empire stretched across continents, the man who could buy and sell fortunes with a single phone call, leaned back in his chair, shaking with laughter. He was the richest man in the room, perhaps the richest man in the country, and his voice carried weight. If he laughed, the others felt safe to laugh too. And so they did, louder and harsher. But then something strange happened. Damien's laughter slowed. His smile faded as his eyes narrowed, fixed on Lena. While others still mocked, he leaned forward, his chin resting on his hand. It was as if he was studying her, searching her face, her walk, her eyes. Lena felt his gaze like fire on her skin, but she did not stop. She kept walking, her plastic dress rustling with each step. For a long moment, it seemed the entire room froze, waiting to see what Damien Cross would do next. Lena reached the edge of the dance floor and stopped. Her hands trembled, but she pressed them together to hide it. She looked around, meeting the eyes of the crowd that wanted her gone. Then she looked directly at Damien. For the first time, the hall grew quiet again. Something in her eyes caught him, something that did not match her dress. There was no shame, no weakness, only fire. She stood like a soldier, daring anyone to push her down. The guests shifted uneasily. They expected Damien to order security to throw her out, or worse, mock her with a clever insult that would end her dignity forever. After all, this was his stage. He was the king here, and no one challenged him. But instead of waving for guards, Damien suddenly pushed back his chair. The sound echoed like thunder in the silence. He stood up slowly, straightening his jacket, his tall frame commanding the room. Every eye turned to him. To everyone's shock, Damien did not look angry. He did not point at Lena with scorn. Instead, he began to walk. His steps were calm, steady, echoing across the marble as he crossed the hall. The laughter that had filled the air died instantly. Guests watched in disbelief, their whispers choking in their throats. No one understood. Why was the CEO, the most powerful man here, walking toward the girl in the trash bag dress? What did he see that they could not? Lena felt her heartbeat slam in her chest as he drew closer. She had prepared for humiliation, for rejection, but not for this. His eyes, sharp and unreadable, locked onto hers. For the first time, she felt her courage tremble. Did he want to crush her spirit in front of everyone? Or was there something else, something hidden behind that unreadable gaze? He stopped only a few steps away from her, so close she could see the small lines on his face, the faint scar at his jaw. The hall was silent now, so silent that even the rustle of her plastic dress sounded loud. Every person leaned forward, waiting for the moment that would decide her fate. Damien tilted his head slightly, his expression shifting once more. There was no mockery now. His lips curved in a way no one expected. Not a smirk, not a cruel smile, but something else entirely. In that instant, Lena realized the night was about to change forever. Damien Cross stood before Lena, the young woman in the trash bag dress, and for a heartbeat the entire ballroom held its breath. The laughter, the whispers, the cruel smiles, everything died into silence. It was as if time had frozen around them. The richest man in the room, the one everyone feared and admired, had risen from his throne-like chair and walked across the hall to face the poorest guest. No one understood what they were seeing. The gala was supposed to be about wealth and glamour. Yet here stood a girl dressed in garbage and a man whose name carried power across the world. The contrast was almost too sharp to believe. Damien's sharp eyes locked onto Lena's. He saw the way her hands trembled slightly at her sides, though she tried to hide it. He saw the defiance burning behind her calm face. She was terrified, but she refused to bow. He recognized that kind of fire. He had carried it once himself, long before he was a billionaire. Something inside him stirred, though his expression remained cold and unreadable. Then he spoke. His voice was deep, smooth, and carried easily across the silent hall. "What do you call this?" he asked, gesturing to her strange outfit. The question was simple, but it cut through the air like a blade. Guests leaned forward, desperate to hear her answer. Lena swallowed, her throat dry. Her heart wanted to race away, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "It's a dress," she said softly, but with enough strength that her words carried. "Made by me. Made from what I could afford." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Some sneered, others chuckled nervously. But Damien's face did not move. He studied her, as though weighing every syllable. Then he asked again, slower this time. "And why wear this here?" Lena's eyes flickered across the hall. She saw the diamonds, the silk, the glittering gowns worth more than her entire life savings. She saw faces filled with judgment, people who wanted her gone. Then she looked back at Damien. "Because I was told this was a charity gala," she said. Her voice was still soft, but there was iron hidden in it now. "Charity is about helping those who have little. So I came as I am with little. If that makes people laugh, then maybe they forgot what charity means." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with shock. Some guests gasped, some frowned, and others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one ever spoke to Damien Cross that way. No one dared to challenge the rules of his world. Yet here was a girl in a trash bag dress, standing her ground. Damien's lips curved into something strange. Not quite a smile, not quite mockery. His eyes gleamed as if he had found something unexpected. "Interesting," he said finally. Then he turned away from her, facing the crowd that still watched in disbelief. "Tell me," he called out loudly, his voice echoing across the hall, "how many of you laughed?" There was silence, but everyone knew the answer. Damien's gaze swept the room like a storm. "You laughed because you saw plastic instead of silk," he said, his tone hard. "You laughed because you judged before you understood. But this woman walked in here braver than most of you would ever dare. She didn't hide. She didn't pretend. She stood here as herself." The hall trembled with his words. Some guests lowered their eyes, ashamed. Others stiffened, angry at being scolded. But none spoke. Damien Cross was not a man to argue with. Then, in front of everyone, he turned back to Lena. "You said you made this yourself," he said. "So you're creative. You turned trash into a dress." His voice lowered, almost thoughtful now. "Tell me, do you think you could do more if you had more to work with?" Lena's chest rose as she drew in a shaky breath. Her eyes widened slightly. Was this a trap? Was he mocking her? But the way he looked at her, sharp, curious, almost challenging, made her believe he was serious. Slowly, she nodded. "Yes," she said. "I could do more. Much more." A faint smirk tugged at Damien's lips, and for the first time, a spark of genuine interest flashed in his eyes. "Good," he said simply. Then he turned back to the crowd again, his voice loud and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, you laugh at trash, but true talent doesn't need diamonds to shine. It only needs a chance. So, here's my challenge. This woman," he gestured toward Lena, "will design a dress. Not from trash this time, but from whatever she chooses. And she will present it at my company's fashion showcase next month." The hall erupted with gasps. Guests exchanged shocked looks. A fashion showcase by Damien Cross's empire was one of the most prestigious events in the world. Designers fought for years to be noticed there. And now he was handing that stage to a girl no one had ever heard of, a girl who had just walked in wearing garbage. Lena's heart hammered so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She had expected humiliation, not an opportunity that sounded impossible. She stared at Damien, trying to read his face. Why was he doing this? Was it kindness? Curiosity? Or was it another test, another way to make her fail in front of everyone? But Damien gave her no time to doubt. "Do you accept?" he asked, his voice cutting through the noise like steel. Lena's throat tightened. The room was spinning with whispers and stares, but all she could see was his face, his piercing eyes waiting for her answer. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. If she said no, she would remain a joke. If she said yes, she risked failing in front of the entire world. Her lips parted, her voice shaking but steady. "Yes," she said. "I accept." A murmur rippled through the hall, disbelief and astonishment blending together. Damien's smirk deepened slightly, as though he had expected nothing less. He gave a short nod. "Then it's settled," he declared. And just like that, the night that began with laughter ended with a challenge that would change Lena's life forever. The night after the gala, Lena could not sleep. She sat on her narrow bed in the tiny apartment she called home, staring at the ceiling as Damien Cross's words echoed in her mind. "You will design a dress. You will present it at my showcase." Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the glittering faces in the ballroom, their laughter, their whispers. Some of them still thought it was a joke. They expected her to fail. And maybe she would. She had no studio, no sewing machines, no fabric worth more than a few coins. All she had were her hands, her imagination, and a heart that refused to break. She whispered to herself in the darkness, "I said yes. I can't take it back now." The next morning, the world was already talking. News outlets ran the story. Social media blazed with images of the trash dress girl standing before Damien Cross. Some mocked her, calling her desperate for attention. Others admired her courage. But everyone was waiting to see if she would rise or collapse under the weight of Damien's challenge. Lena avoided the noise. She knew that if she read too much, doubt would swallow her whole. Instead, she focused on the question that mattered. How do I make a dress that proves I belong? She began with sketches. On the floor of her apartment, using scraps of paper and broken pencils, she drew shapes, patterns, and lines. She imagined fabric flowing like water, colors blending like dawn, cuts sharp as fire. She filled page after page, her mind racing faster than her hand could move. For hours she forgot the world outside. But soon reality hit. She needed materials. Real fabric. Thread. Tools. Things that cost money she did not have. She stared at her empty wallet and felt her chest tighten. The showcase was less than a month away. How could she compete with designers who had millions when she barely had enough to eat? Her hands trembled. For the first time, she felt the weight of the trap. Perhaps this was Damien's game after all. He had lifted her up only so the world could watch her fall. But then, something unexpected happened. A knock came at her door. When she opened it, she found a small box on the floor. No note, no name. Inside were rolls of fabric, silk, satin, velvet, colors rich and deep. Her eyes widened. She touched the cloth, feeling its softness against her fingers. She had never owned material like this in her life. She looked up and down the hall, but no one was there. She whispered, "Why would anyone?" The thought struck her, Damien. Was this his way of pushing her forward? Or was it another test? She didn't know, but she couldn't waste it. She carried the box inside and laid out the fabric carefully, like treasure. For the next days, Lena worked. Her tiny apartment turned into a workshop. She measured, cut, and stitched by hand. Her fingers blistered, her back ached, but she didn't stop. Every morning she woke with determination, and every night she collapsed in exhaustion. And slowly something began to take shape. The dress was not just fabric, it was her story. She chose deep blues that reminded her of nights spent dreaming alone, soft silvers that shimmered like hope in darkness, and bold lines that spoke of strength. She wanted the world to see not just beauty, but survival, defiance, and dignity. But outside her apartment, the world was cruel. News reporters camped near her building, shouting questions whenever she stepped outside. Strangers laughed at her in the street, calling her the plastic princess. Even some of her neighbors mocked her, saying she was wasting her time. One evening, as she carried groceries up the stairs, a group of young women blocked her way. They had seen her face on the news. "So, you think you're some kind of designer now?" one sneered. "Damien Cross just set you up to humiliate you. Everyone knows it." Lena froze. She wanted to shout, to defend herself, but her voice refused to come. They laughed and walked away, leaving her standing there with her groceries shaking in her hands. She returned to her apartment and shut the door, leaning against it as her eyes filled with tears. For a moment, doubt crushed her. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm nothing. Maybe this is all a cruel joke. But then her eyes fell on the dress, half finished, waiting on the stand she had built from scrap wood. The sight of it steadied her. The dress wasn't laughing at her. The dress was her answer. Slowly, she wiped her tears and whispered, "No. I will finish. I will not let them win." A week later, Lena received a letter sealed with the Cross Corporation's emblem. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, a single line was written. "Progress is nothing without presentation. Report to the Cross Tower in 3 days." Her chest tightened. The Cross Tower, Damien's fortress in the heart of the city. The place where deals were made and futures destroyed. Why was he calling her there? For 3 days, Lena barely slept. She worked furiously, finishing the first version of her dress. When the morning came, she packed it carefully into a bag and took the train to the city. The Cross Tower rose above everything else, a glass giant cutting into the sky. As she stood at its base, her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break her ribs. The guards at the door already knew her name. They led her through marble halls and golden elevators until she reached the top floor. The doors opened into a vast office with walls of glass. Damien Cross stood near the window, his back to her, looking out over the city like a king watching his kingdom. Lena stepped inside, clutching her bag. The doors shut behind her. Without turning, Damien spoke, his voice calm but sharp. "Show me what you've made." Her hands tightened around the bag. The moment had come, the first real test. The office at the top of Cross Tower was silent except for the faint hum of the city below. Glass walls stretched from floor to ceiling, giving the illusion that Damien Cross stood among the clouds. He didn't turn to face Lena right away. His voice carried calmly, like a man who already knew the outcome. "Show me what you've made." Lena's hands tightened on the bag she carried. She could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. For a second, her knees almost gave out. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But then she remembered the nights of work, the pain in her fingers, the whispers of mockery from strangers. She lifted her chin. Slowly, she pulled the dress from the bag. The room seemed to change as the fabric caught the light, deep blue folds flowing like waves, silver threads glinting as if they held moonlight. It wasn't perfect. There were small mistakes, uneven stitches, and places where the fabric pulled too tightly. But it had something the others didn't, heart. Damien finally turned. His sharp eyes moved over the dress, detail by detail.
He didn't speak.
He circled her like a hawk watching prey. He touched the fabric, examined the seams, studied the way the design fell. The silence stretched until Lena thought she would collapse. Then Damien spoke. Flawed. He traced a finger along the hem. Your stitching is uneven. Your lines are imbalanced. This would not survive 10 minutes on a runway. The words cut like knives. Lena's chest tightened. She wanted to defend herself, to say she had no machines, no studio, no team. But she bit her tongue. Excuses would only make her weaker. Damien's eyes lifted to hers.
Cold.
Searching. Why did you make it? Lena blinked. What? He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. Why this design? Why these colors? You had access to real fabric for the first time in your life, and this is what you made.
Why?
Her throat felt dry, but she forced herself to speak. Because it's me. The blue is for the nights I thought I would never be seen. The silver is for hope. And the sharp lines, they're for strength. I wanted a dress that didn't just look beautiful. I wanted one that told the truth. The words spilled out of her like fire. She didn't know if she was brave or foolish, but she refused to stop. Anyone can make a perfect dress, Mr. Cross. But I made mine to carry a story. To prove that even someone like me, someone everyone laughed at, can stand here and not be afraid. For the first time, Damien didn't answer right away. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Just for a second. Then he turned away, walking back to the window. Lena's heart pounded. Had she ruined everything? Finally, Damien spoke, his back still to her. Do you know why I chose you? She hesitated.
No.
Because you are an insult. His voice was sharp. The fashion world is built on precision, wealth, power. And yet in one night, you mocked it all by walking into my gala in garbage. They laughed at you, yes, but they also feared you. Because you reminded them that beauty does not belong to them alone. He turned, his gaze piercing. But fear alone is not enough. You want to stand on my stage? Then you must become more than a symbol. You must become a storm. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Damien pressed a button on his desk. The door opened, and a tall woman in a sleek black suit entered. She moved with confidence, her eyes sharp as blades. This is Veronica Hale, Damien said. She is my lead designer. She will train you. If you survive her methods, you will earn a place in the showcase. If you fail, his voice lowered to ice, you will disappear, and the world will never speak your name again. Veronica's eyes raked over Lena, full of disdain. This is the girl, she said, almost to herself. Pathetic. Damien didn't answer. He only watched Lena, waiting. The weight of the moment pressed down on her. She had thought finishing the dress was the battle. But this was only the beginning. She realized Damien had never intended to hand her an easy chance. This was his game.
His test.
His trap. Lena swallowed hard, then nodded. I'll do it. Veronica smirked, a cruel curve of her lips. We'll see. That night, Lena was taken to the Cross Corporation's design floor. It was like stepping into another world. Rows of sewing machines, cutting tables, mannequins draped in fabric worth more than her apartment. Designers moved like soldiers, precise and focused, every stitch a weapon. Veronica introduced her to the team with mocking words. This is Lena. She made a dress out of trash. Mr. Cross thinks she's worth testing. Don't waste your time helping her. The others sneered, some laughed. Lena felt their eyes burn into her. She stood frozen, her bag clutched to her chest, humiliation rising like heat. But then she remembered her words to Damien. I wanted a dress that told the truth. She lifted her chin. I don't need your help, she said quietly, almost to herself. I'll prove it. The training began. Veronica was ruthless. She tore Lena's work apart, insulted her skills, demanded perfection. She forced her to remake the dress again and again, pushing her until her fingers bled. Every night, Lena staggered back to her corner of the workshop, her body aching, her mind drowning in doubt. But every morning, she stood again. Because each time she looked at her creation, she saw more than fabric. She saw herself fighting to exist, fighting to be seen. And somewhere, hidden behind the glass walls, Damien Cross watched. Always watching. The workshop smelled of fabric, steam, and sweat. The sound of sewing machines never stopped, buzzing like angry bees through the night. Lena sat hunched over her table, her fingers trembling as she tried to push the needle through silk. Her fingertips were raw, blistered, and bandaged. Veronica Hale loomed behind her. Pathetic, she hissed. With a sharp movement, she ripped the half-finished dress off the mannequin. Threads snapped. Fabric tore. Lena's chest tightened as if her own skin had been ripped apart. You call this stitching? Veronica tossed the ruined piece onto the floor. You're wasting everyone's time. Damien should have sent you back to the gutter. The other designers chuckled softly, eyes flicking to Lena with scorn. She wanted to vanish under their stares, but she forced her shaking hands back onto the fabric. I can do it, she whispered. Veronica leaned close, her voice like venom. Then prove it. By sunrise. A full dress. Perfect. Lena froze. A dress like that would take a skilled team days. Alone with her aching body, it was impossible. But if she refused, she was finished. Veronica smirked and walked away, leaving Lena drowning in silence. The hours bled together. Her hands moved automatically, cutting, pinning, stitching. Each mistake burned her nerves raw. She fought exhaustion, fought pain, fought the voice in her head that told her she wasn't enough. By 3 a.m., her eyes blurred. She stabbed her finger with a needle, blood dripping onto the silk. Panic surged. She pressed her bandage against it, but the stain spread like ink. Her breath broke. She couldn't do this. She had been a fool to think she could ever belong here. She was nothing but a girl who sewed scraps in the dark, pretending to be more. Tears slipped down her cheeks, hot and silent. She dropped the fabric, pressing her hands to her face. The world around her spun. A shadow fell over her. She flinched, expecting Veronica's cruelty again. But when she lowered her hands, it wasn't Veronica. It was Damien Cross. He stood in the half-dark, silent, watching. His eyes landed on the ruined dress, then on the blood on her hands. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, in a voice softer than she had ever heard from him, he asked, "Why are you crying?" Lena shook her head, ashamed. "Because I can't do it. I'm not like them. I don't belong here. Maybe I never did." Damien stepped closer, his presence filling the space. "Do you think I built this empire because I belonged? When I started, they called me trash too. They laughed. They said my vision was impossible. But I did not care what they thought. I forced the world to see me." Lena lifted her eyes. His gaze was hard, but beneath it flickered something else, something almost human. "You are breaking," Damien said.
Good.
"That means the weak part of you is dying. Let it die. What remains will be stronger." Her breath trembled. "And if nothing remains?" His lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. "Then you were never worth my time." The words cut deep. But instead of destroying her, they lit something inside.
A spark.
A fury. Lena wiped her tears and picked up the fabric again. "Then I'll show you," she whispered. Damien nodded once, then turned and left as silently as he had come. The night dragged on. Her fingers shook, but she refused to stop. Every stitch felt like defiance. Every fold was a scream against failure. She poured her pain into the fabric, every tear, every scar, every dream. By dawn, her body felt hollow, her arms numb. But on the mannequin stood a dress. It was not flawless. The seams wavered, the hem faltered. But it was alive. Dark crimson silk flowing like fire, black lines cutting sharp as blades. It was not pretty. It was power. Lena collapsed to the floor, staring at it through heavy eyes. She didn't know if it was enough. She didn't know if Damien would see strength or weakness. But it was her. Every part of her. When the team arrived that morning, whispers filled the air. They stared at the dress with surprise, then with unease. Veronica entered, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. She stopped in front of Lena's creation, her lips curling in disdain. This? She circled the mannequin slowly.
Ugly.
Harsh. No grace. She ripped at one of the seams with her fingernail.
Sloppy.
Lena's chest burned. She wanted to scream, but her voice was gone. Veronica smiled cruelly. Pathetic. She raised her hand to tear the dress apart. Enough. The single word froze the room. Damien Cross had entered. His eyes moved over the crimson creation, his face unreadable. Veronica stepped back. Mr. Cross, this is not worthy of your showcase. It's powerful. Damien's voice cut her off like a blade. The room went silent. He stepped closer, studying the dress. It is raw, imperfect, but it carries weight. This is no child's fantasy. This is war. His gaze shifted to Lena. She stood trembling, barely able to breathe. You are not broken, Damien said. Not yet. For the first time, Lena felt it, not just the pain, not just the fear, but the truth. She was still standing. She was still fighting. And Damien Cross had seen it. The morning of the showcase arrived like a storm. The city's elite poured into the grand hall, millionaires, celebrities, leaders, all waiting to see Damien Cross's legendary fashion empire unveil its next triumph. Cameras flashed. Reporters jotted notes. The air buzzed with money, power, and hunger. Backstage, Lena's heart pounded. She stood in her simple black dress, hands trembling against the wall. Around her, the other designers moved with confidence, their models shimmering in gowns worth more than Lena had ever imagined. Satin, diamonds, feathers, gold. They glittered under the stage lights. And then there was hers, the crimson dress. Fierce, sharp, imperfect. It stood on the rack like an intruder among royalty. A piece of fire surrounded by glass. Whispers swirled. Some designers laughed at it, shaking their heads. Who let this rag in here? One sneered. Another snorted. Trash bag girl strikes again. Their words pierced Lena, but she held on to the memory of Damien's eyes the night before. He hadn't laughed. He had seen something in her work. Something no one else dared to see. Still, doubt clawed at her. What if he was wrong? What if they all laughed at her in front of the world? Her knees nearly gave out. Lena. The voice made her turn. Damien Cross stood in the shadows, away from the chaos, as calm as if the world belonged to him. He studied her for a long moment. Do you fear them? He asked. Her throat tightened. Yes. Good, he said. Fear means you care. But remember this. Fear is a leash. Do not let them hold it. Lena swallowed hard. And if they laugh? Damien's lips curved in a faint, cold smile. Then laugh with them. Because nothing kills ridicule faster than indifference. You owe them nothing, but you owe yourself everything. His words struck her chest like a spark. She nodded slowly. Now, he said, his voice low but sharp. Prove you are not trash. Then he disappeared back into the crowd. The lights dimmed. Music thundered through the hall. The first models stepped onto the runway, gowns flowing like liquid gold. Gasps rose from the audience. Flashbulbs popped. Every design seemed flawless, glittering with wealth and polish. Lena stood backstage, her heart racing faster with each turn. One by one, the other designers' creations swept across the runway. Each seemed perfect. Each seemed untouchable. Her turn crept closer. The crimson dress shimmered under the waiting light, and Lena's stomach twisted into knots. Finally, the stagehand pointed. You're up. Her model stepped forward, tall and strong, her face calm. She wore Lena's creation. The The crimson fabric clung like flame, the black cuts slicing sharp lines through it. It wasn't soft or sweet, it was dangerous alive. As she walked onto the runway, silence fell. The crowd leaned forward, their whispers starting like ripples on water. "What is this?" one woman murmured. "So harsh," another man said. "Ugly," someone scoffed. But others stared, frowning, confused. The gown was not like the others. It didn't beg for approval. It demanded attention. It unsettled. It challenged. And Damien Cross, seated at the front, leaned back in his chair, his eyes gleaming. Lena held her breath as the model reached the center of the runway, turned, and walked back. The silence broke into noise, half laughter, half awe. Some clapped softly. Others shook their heads. A few whispered excitedly into cameras. Veronica Hales smirked from across the stage, whispering to the other designers. "She's finished. That dress is a disaster." Lena's chest tightened. For a heartbeat, she believed it. She wanted to run, to vanish, to never hear the laughter again. But then she saw something. Not everyone was mocking. In the second row, a woman in a silver gown leaned forward, eyes wide. She whispered something to her companion, pointing at the crimson dress with excitement. A man nearby nodded, scribbling notes furiously. The crowd was divided. Some hated it, but others were curious. And curiosity was more dangerous than applause. When the last model walked off the runway, the showcase ended with a wave of applause. Cameras flashed. Reporters rushed to the backstage doors. Lena stood frozen, unable to breathe. Had she failed? Or had she lit a fire she couldn't yet see? The answer came quickly. Veronica stormed toward her, her face twisted with glee. "Pathetic," she hissed. "The critics will tear you apart. Damien only kept you here as his entertainment. Don't fool yourself. You're nothing." Lena's lips trembled. For once, she wanted to fight back. But before she could, another voice cut through. "Enough, Veronica." Damien Cross stood behind them. The designers turned silent as his gaze swept over them. He looked at Lena's dress again. His eyes burned with something sharp, unreadable. Then, with calm authority, he said, "Her work will not be forgotten." The room froze. Even Veronica faltered. Damien turned away, his voice carrying like thunder. "Some of you designed to please. Others designed to impress. But he glanced back at Lena. She designs to disturb. And disturbance is the root of change." Whispers spread like wildfire. Lena's breath caught. She wasn't sure if he had saved her or set her on fire in front of them all. But one thing was certain. They were watching her now. Every single one of them.